Hello and welcome back to the farm. My name is Rachel and today's video, it's all about these little guys right here. And this is a garlic scape. And you probably saw it in our last day in the life video. I was starting to preserve them. They got into Aaron's coffee cup and he wasn't quite happy about that. But the reason why I want to do this video is because it's not something that you see all of the time. If you grow garlic, you've got an abundance of them. If you don't grow garlic, you're probably not very familiar with it. This is not something that you see in the grocery store, but this is something you might see at your local farmer's market. We have some very good friends that farm here in our community, and they grow a ton of garlic, and they sell the scapes at the market. And you would be surprised how many people ask them what they are, where did they come from, how do I use them, what do I do with them. So at the end of this video, I hope that you are aware of them. So if you have a friend that gardens or farms and they have scapes to give away, that you will take them and use them. Or if you see them at your local farmer's market, you will already know what to do with it, and it's just another great way you can support your local farmer. And not to mention, they are very good for you. They taste just like garlic. They can be used in place of garlic. They're inexpensive, so it's just another great thing to add to your kitchen. So what I did was I'm going to show the clip right here of how to harvest. So here is my garlic. You can see this is the whole stalk. Obviously the bulb grows under the ground. And it sends up this shoot, which is really cute. It curls. But what this does is it's getting ready to flower. And you don't want it to flower. You want it to focus all of its energy on the bulb. So what you do is you come through and you cut that off, and that is called the garlic scape. Okay, now that you know where they come from and how they're harvested, now you need to know how to use them. When you go on Pinterest or YouTube, you will see it's like the first thing that comes up is how to make a garlic scape pesto. And I tried that. First of all, you're using a lot of olive oil. You're using a lot of either pine nuts or walnuts. I used cashews, and that can be expensive because a lot of the recipes call for raw versions of those. And it's not something, and then if you're dairy free, you've got to find a way to switch out the Parmesan cheese. It's not something I would spread out over toast. It's not something I would put on pizza. I would not use that in place of a basil pesto, but I didn't feel like the scape pesto was as versatile. So instead of putting a lot of time, effort, and money into that, I am just going to preserve these. Then I can throw them into anything that I want to, use them however I see fit in the moment, and I'm not locked in or boxed into any one thing. And I think that is one thing we have to keep in mind when we are preserving food, is how is this going to be useful for me in the future? Because if it's not, then you just put a lot of time, effort, and money into something that you're not going to use. So what I do is, after I've harvested and washed and dried these, I actually had another idea for the tips. Now this is where the flour would pop out, and I was just getting rid of that and feeding it out to the chickens or compost. But I think what I'm gonna do with these, I think I'm gonna ferment them and use them for salad toppings. Last year I had fermented scapes that I got from our friend, and I really liked them in a salad. So I think that's what I'm gonna do with these little guys. Because when you cut them open, let me see if I found a good one. You can see the flour that was starting to form. Another thing I think you could do with it that would be good is infuse them in olive oil or make infused vinegar with them as well. But I am going to ferment the little flower pods. So I'm going to finish getting these all cut and ready, and then I will start preserving them. If you're going to ferment the garlic scape, you would use the exact same process I'm using to do the flower bulb. To ferment these, I boiled 4 cups of water. I added 1 teaspoon per cup of water of salt. After it cooled, I poured them over the scape flowers. Then I added the fermentation weight and a mason top, and I let these sit on the counter for 3 to 4 days, and they are so good. Okay, here's what I have left. So I've already made a pesto, which took 2 cups. I have gifted an entire 2-gallon or gallon Ziploc bag to a family member and gave another bag of scapes to a friend. So that's a lot. We're gonna have a lot of garlic, but that's okay because I don't think you can have too much. So let's get these prepped. The next thing I'm going to do is chop them into about 1/4-inch pieces and pour some olive oil over them and blend them up until they make a paste. Alright, I got about 3 cups of chopped up scapes. Stick these in the blender, and what I'm going to do is pour olive oil in there. I put a little bit of olive oil in there, probably about 1/2 cup. And I'm going to blend it up, and I'm going to watch the consistency. If I think it's getting too thick or it's not blending, you can always add more olive oil, but you want this to be more like a paste. You don't want it super runny. Now that it's all blended up in the consistency I want, I'm going to start filling these little ice cube trays with it, and I will freeze them. Once they're frozen, I'll pop them out and I'll put them in a Ziploc bag, and then I'll be able to grab them if I'm frying something. You know, whatever I'm cooking, I can grab one of these trays and throw one of these cubes and throw it into that. And I'm not super limited on how it can be used. I'm not saying not to make a pesto out of this. I mean, obviously you can. I just wouldn't make the scapes the main ingredient. So when I have an abundance of basil, I will throw one of these cubes in my basil pesto to give it that good garlic flavor. Alright, the next way I'm going to do this is so easy and not complicated at all, but it's a really good idea, and I think it's going to work out really well. So all you're going to do is take your little scapes and you're going to cut them into little pieces. Then I'm going to lay them out on a piece of parchment paper on a baking sheet and stick them in the freezer. Once they're frozen enough that they won't stick together, I'm going to put them in a bag and put them in the freezer. That's literally it. The nice thing about that is you can just take a small handful or however many you want and throw it in your sauce, throw it in your stew, throw it in whatever you're making, and it's ready to go and ready to use. My little helpers found their way into the kitchen. Oh, Buddy, you gotta get it smaller than... That's too big. That's better. Working hard. Now that they're doing this for me, I can tackle all of this.
You get to fold all that?
Oh yeah. I think I'd rather cut garlic scapes. But they came and rescued me just in time. I got injured. Actually re-injured the injury.
What?
Remember I cut it the other day? Well, I cut it open again with those scissors. Not good. Keep going, guys. You're doing great. You gotta finish that pile and then we're done.
Okay.
So I took all of those garlic scape pieces that we had cut up into about a quarter of an inch, give or take. The kids were helping me, so it wasn't quite, you know how that goes. And I put them on a dehydrator sheet, and I'm actually going to try dehydrating them then grinding them into like a garlic powder. I use a lot of garlic powder when I cook. Partly because I don't have the option of fresh garlic up until now. All of the garlic that I bought from our friends last year, I used up fairly quickly. So I opt to use organic garlic powder in a lot of our cooking that is grown in the USA. But I think grinding them into a powder is going to be the best use of this and the best way to preserve them for our family. For the garlic scape pesto, I will type out the exact ingredients and put them in the description box below. But it's basically scapes, cashews, lemon juice, olive oil, salt, pepper, and some basil. You can also add Parmesan cheese or nutritional yeast if you're dairy-free. I added all the ingredients to the blender until I had the desired consistency. If it was too thick, I just kept adding a little bit of olive oil at a time. So not only can you make a garlic scape pesto, but you can also dehydrate them, freeze them, pickle them, ferment them. The possibilities are pretty open. But I hope that next time you're out and about, maybe at a farmer's market, and you come across them or a friend gifts you with a bag of them, that now you have a better idea as to what you can do with them. Pesto is not the only option. It is the most popular option out there, but there are other ways to incorporate them into your home and into your routine. As I'm preserving our harvest and looking for different ways to use them, I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, how is this going to serve me a few months from now? How is this going to serve me in winter? And for me, pesto is not one of those things that I'm going to need in December, but garlic powder is. Being able to throw scapes from the freezer into a stew is going to be a really great way for me to use those up. For you, it might be a pesto. For you, it might be a different way of using them. But be thinking in the back of your mind as you're preserving your harvest, as you're using this food, how is this going to serve me later on? What do I use the most of with this particular thing out of my garden? And go with that. Because if you try to get into all these other fancy recipes and ways of doing it, it just gets expensive, and then I find for us, we don't end up using it. And nothing is worse than putting all this time and effort into growing a beautiful garden to just not be able to use what you grew. So I hope you found this helpful and inspiring, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. May the Lord bless and keep you until next time.